Hello and welcome to my very last Sudoku video of the year. Thank you so much if you've been watching over the last couple of months with all the Sudokus that I've been presenting. And if you haven't been, then feel free to go and have a browse. I do think there are some pretty good Sudokus, if I do say so myself, that I've presented and talked through the solutions for. But for today, I thought to bring in the new year, 2022, now that it's New Year's Eve, I thought I would do a special themed puzzle based around the number 2022. Okay, maybe not. I wasn't quite quick enough to design a Sudoku based around that theme. But I do have a Sudoku called 4 Sevens, which is based around the number 28. So I suppose if you add together the digits of 2022, you get 2 plus 2 plus 2, which is 6. Let's take that away from 2022. You get 2016. We can bank that number. Well, how many 2's are there in 2022? Well, there are 3 2's, so we could do 3 to the power of 2 and 2 to the power of 3. That's 9 and 8, respectively. Multiply those together to get 72. We had 2016 earlier, didn't we? So we could do 2016 divided by 72. Oh look, it's 28. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. It's a relevant Sudoku. Thank you. I better have got those calculations right now. I did those just in my head just before recording, so I hope they're correct. But anyway, regardless of whether it's got anything to do with the current year or the celebrations, this is, I think, quite a good puzzle. I'm quite pleased with it. It's all to do with the number 28, obviously. And what are the rules? Well, normal Sudoku rules apply, so every row, column, and 3 by 3 box adds up to, contains the digits 1 to 9 exactly once each, and adds up to 45, by the way. And clues outside the grid with an associated arrow, so these two are little killer clues showing the sum of the indicated diagonal, which may include repeated digits. So, I mean, with this one, it's basically a given digit. Whoops, let's put it on the numbers. A given digit, pretty much, because it's this diagonal adds up to 2. I just thought I'd keep it outside the grid for thematic purposes. Alright, a sandwich clue shows the sum of the digits between the 1 and the 9 in that row or column. So let's say this is a sandwich clue. Let's say that's a 1 and a 9. Let's get rid of that for now, because we'll come back to what is actually in the grid. If that's a 1 and a 9, then these digits here, in between the 1 and the 9, sum to 28. Okay, so that's that. Or if it's a column clue, then we could have a 1 and a 9 here, in either order, doesn't matter, then those would add up to 28 and those ones outside. And it doesn't have to be on the edge either, we could have those adding up to 28 and those ones outside would, well, we'll come back to what they'd add up to because that becomes important. Right, so that is a sandwich clue. An X sum clue shows the total of the first X digits, where X is the first digit from that direction. So what that means is, let's say this is an X sum clue, and let's say that's a 7. That would mean that these 7 digits, including that 7, add up to 28. Or in other words, those add up to 21, because we've already got a 7 there. So those add up to 28. Or if that was a 5, then those 5 would add up to 28. Or in other words, those 4 would add up to 23. And so on. So that is what a sandwich clue is and what an X sum clue is. Okay, clues along the bottom, so these 6 clues here, all these 6 28s, they are all sandwiches, so regular sandwiches where between the 1 and the 9 in that column, the digits add up to 28. The clue in row 5, so this clue here, that acts as a sandwich and an X sum. Okay, the clue in column 2 is just an X sum, not a sandwich. Not necessarily a sandwich, I should say. And the clue in column 8, again I've got column 2 and 8. Yeah, I think it's quite clever. Maybe you're just tutting and sighing and telling me to shut up and get on with it. Justified. The clue in column 8 is a sandwich, but the crusts are 4 and 7, not 1 and 9. So in between the 4 and the 7, these digits would add up to 28. And that's it. So it's a little bit confusing because the clues all mean different things. Maybe I could have highlighted them in certain colours or something like that. I don't know what the best way of presenting it would be, but I quite like just having a whole load of 2s and 8s and 28s in the grid, and then the rules section explains which one each one is. So yes, this is where you can find all of that information for what all of the clues are. So I'll leave that on the screen. I'll try not to accidentally scroll up or anything like that. As always, have a go at the puzzle first, if you like. In the description, there is a link where you can have a go. Otherwise, enjoy my solution of it. Here we go then. So, as I just said a couple of minutes ago, this is basically just a given digit. That's a 2, because that one cell diagonal sums to 2, so that one cell must be a 2. We can also have a look at this 8 diagonal, because now we can't have a 2 anywhere along this 8 diagonal. It can't go there because that's in the same row, that's in the same column, and these two are in the same box. So we need at least 2 1s. If we only had 1 1, then the others would all be 3s, and that would add up to 10, and that's too much. So we need at least 2 1s, and then the other 2 would be 3s, or maybe we could have 3 1s in like this, and then that would be a 5. So a few different options, but there's quite a restriction on those because we're going to need a lot of 1s in there. Alright, the next thing to do is to think about the geometry of these 28s. Well, a little bit about it, first of all. So, how can we make a 28 sandwich? Well, first of all, what goes outside the sandwich? Let's say this is our sandwich, and we're going to colour these red. Let's pretend that these are the crusts of the sandwich. So this is a 1 and a 9, and in between the 1 and the 9 we have 28. That would mean that these two would add up to 7. Why 7? Because 28 plus 1 plus 9 is 38, and we know that the whole column has to add up to 45 because the digits 1 to 9 add up to 45, so that would leave 7 just here. So we could do it like that, or we could do it like that, where this is just the number 7. Could we make it any smaller? Can we make it like that? Well, in theory, yes, because we can make that 1, 2, and 4. Because 1, 2, and 4 add up to 7. But we know that there is a 1 in the crust of the sandwich, so that will clash with the 1 over here. So we can never make it that small. It has to be at least, the sandwiches all have to be at least this wide, or this wide, or this wide. We can never have the sandwich leaking into these middle boxes over here. It just will not work. So that means that we can colour all of these places where the sandwich crusts, the 1s and the 9s, can't go. We'll colour them green. I think the convention with sandwich clues, with sandwich puzzles, is to colour everything that can't be a 1 or a 9 green, and everything that is a 1 or a 9 red. All of the sandwich crusts red. Okay, so that means we have a 1 and a 9 in here, and a 1 and a 9 in here, and a 1 and a 9 in here, which means that these can't be 1s or 9s, and these can't be 1s or 9s, and these can't be 1s or 9s. So let's colour those green as well. And now we can revisit our 8 clue along here, because we know neither of these can be 1s anymore. We already said that it needs at least 2 1s in here, so those 1s must be in there. The minimum we can make these is a 3 and a 3, because neither of them can be 1 and neither of them can be 2. So the minimum is 3 and 3, and in fact that is what it must be, because that now sums to 8. And now the killer clues are done, finished with those. Good. In fact, let's colour these red, because we know they are sandwich crusts now. So the other crust of the sandwich, we said that it has to be at least that wide, didn't we? And at least that wide. So those are all not going to be sandwich crust. That's not going to be a sandwich crust either. So that's all sorted. That's also not a sandwich crust because it's not a 1 or a 9. That's straightforward enough. So we're going to have a 9 here or here, and then the 1 down here. Can it be here though? Well, no, because that would be the widest we could make it. So that can't be a 1. That can't be the other end of the sandwich. The other end of the sandwich has to be over here. Alright. Now, this 28 clue here, the clue in row 5 acts as a sandwich and an X-sum. So this is a sandwich. And so where can we put the crusts of the sandwich? It's going to be either here and here, or here and here, or here and here. Well, can we make 28 out of 2 cells? No. Can we make 28 out of those 2 cells? No. So it's going to have to be there and there, which means this can no longer be a crust because it can't be 1 or 9 because this is a 1-9 pair. So that is gone. Now in the middle box, where can we put the 1 and the 9? Well, it has to be here. So these are our crusts. Good, and then we've got the other 1 and the 9 either there or there, there and there, or there and there. Alright, let's have a look at this column again, because we know that we've got a sandwich of 28, because of this 28 clue down here, and 7, a total of 7 outside of that sandwich. Okay, well we've already got 2, so we need a further 5 outside the sandwich, and we know it can't be 1 and 4 because 1 is one of the crusts. So we need a 5 to go either there, outside the sandwich, or there, outside the sandwich. Either way, that is not a 5. Why is that important? Well, because it can't be a 2 or a 3, and it can't be a 5, so it must be a 4. That is the only way to make this sandwich work, to make sure that we have 7 outside of the sandwich, so that the whatever goes inside the sandwich will now add up to 28. So we've got 7 outside the sandwich. That is done. There's actually more that we can do here now, because we also know that the clue in row 5 acts as an X-sum. So what that tells us is that the first 4 cells add up to 28, because 28 is the X-sum clue. Well, we've already got a 4, so the next 3 cells must add up to 28 minus 4, which is 24. And there's only one way to make 24 out of 3 different cells within a Sudoku, and that's 7, 8 and 9. That one has obviously got to be the 9, and then these 2 will be a 7 and an 8. That 9 tells us that's a 1, and all we've got left in the row is 2, 5 and 6. Excellent progress. Okay, so what shall we do next? Well, there's a 1 there and a 1 there. That tells us that there's going to be a 1 in either of these 2, and it's going to have to pair up with another crust down here. It can't be there because that's too small. So it's going to have to be there. Okay, which means that we can't have a 9 anywhere else in the bottom row. Specifically here, we can't have the 9. So the 9 will have to go there in order to be the other crust for the sandwich in this column. So that is now not a crust. We can paint that green. So now, what is outside the sandwich here? Well, it could be... Well, let's have a look at this one. In case you haven't cottoned onto this yet, no, that's a very patronising thing to say. Something that we can deduce about all of these sandwiches is we've got 3 options basically for what goes outside these 28 sandwiches. It's either going to be a 2 and a 5, like we know is the case over here, or a 4 and a 3, like we know is the case over here. It can't be a 1 and a 6, because 1 is included in the crusts. It can't be 1, 2, 4, because 1 is included in the crusts. Or it could just be a 7. Just 1 digit outside the sandwich, and it's a 7. Basically, it needs to add up to 7, so it's got to be either 7, or 2 and 5, or 3 and 4. Okay. So these two, well, it's two cells, so it must be 2 and 5 or 3 and 4, but this can't be a 2 or a 3, so it must be 4 or 5, and this must be 2 or 3. But what if this is a 5 and this is a 2? Okay, well, we know that we need a 5 outside the sandwich in this column as well, so the 5 would end up going down here. So we'd have a 5 there and there, a 2 there and there, and so we would need a 2 and a 5 to go in here. But wait, we already need a 1 and a 9 to go in here because, well, they're the only non-green cells in the box, and green cells cannot be 1 or 9. So that would mean that these 3 cells would have to include 1, 2, 5, and 9, and that's just not going to happen. In fact, we can say that as a more general case, along all of, well, this kind of column and this column, we can't have a 2 and a 5 outside the sandwich in both of these, or and similarly we can't have a 3 and a 4 outside the sandwich in both of these columns, and then exactly the same applies for here. So if we have a 2 and a 5 outside the sandwich in this column, for example, this will have to be either a 3 and a 4 outside or just a 7 outside. It can't be another 2 and 5. Okay, I've hammered that point home enough. But what that means is that this can't be 5 and 2, so it must be 4 and 3 in that order. Excellent. Good. What else do we know? Well, there's a 9 there or there. There's a 9 there. So where does the 9 go that pairs with this one? It must be there. So that's sorted. So these can now go green. And you may have noticed that there's a kind of shadowing effect between the 1s and the 9s going on here. So they're always 6. Whoops, they're always 6 apart. Is the same, and so there's always going to be exactly 2 digits outside the sandwich. Is the same going to apply for all of the 9s that go in these boxes and the 1s that go in these boxes? And the answer is yes, because let's say there's a 9 there and a 1 there. And a 1 there. Let's just pick specific examples. A 9 there and a 1 there, and then that would be a 7 outside the sandwich, and that seems to work. Okay, but then a 1, there has to be a 1 in this row somewhere, so it would go here, for example. And then where does the accompanying 9 go? It's stuck. It needs to be there to make the sandwich big enough, but obviously it can't be there. So no matter how we work it, there is no way to fit in a sandwich clue, well, any of these bottom sandwich clues, where it's a 6-cell sandwich with just the digit 7 outside. It won't work. So all of them will kind of shadow each other around, and they'll always, the 1s and the 9s will always be 6 cells apart in these 6 columns that have the 28 sandwich clues in. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, it means that for all 6 of these columns, well, at the ends of the columns, we are either going to have a 2 or a 5 if it's a 2 and a 5 outside the sandwich, or a 3 or a 4 if it's a 3 and a 4 outside the sandwich, or a 1 or a 9 if it's just the crust of the sandwich. We can never have 6, 7 or 8 in any of those positions, and that gives us 6, 7, 8 triples in these positions. They are all 6, 7 or 8. Excellent. From this point we can have a look a little bit more into these clues in columns 2 and 8. Let's look at this one first. So this one is an X sum. That means that the first 6 digits add up to 28 if that's a 6, or the first 7 digits add up to 28 if that's a 7, or the first 8 digits add up to 28 if that's an 8. Is it going to be an 8? Well, quite clearly not, because if those add up to 28, then that has to be the digit 17, and that is not a valid digit within a 9x9 Sudoku, so it's not an 8. If it's a 7, then those add up to 28, meaning those two add up to 17, which is possible with two different digits within a Sudoku. It could be 9 and 8, but unfortunately it's clearly not, because the 9 is already taken in the box and the column. So it's not going to be a 7, that just leaves 6. So we can get rid of 6's all the way round there. So what that tells us is that these 6 digits add up to 28, which leaves 17 for those 3 digits. Now we can have a little look at this 28 clue. So this is a sandwich clue, but the crusts of the sandwich are 4 and 7. So within the 4 and the 7 in this column, there are digits adding up to 28. So what does that mean we have outside the sandwich? Well, it's not 7 this time. It's not digits adding up to 7 this time, because this time we've got 28 inside the sandwich. Let's say that's the sandwich. Then the crusts themselves are 4 and 7, so 28 plus 4 plus 7, that's 39. And so that means that outside the sandwich we will only have 6, or digits adding up to 6. But we know that at least one of these two is going to have to be outside the sandwich, because we can't have a middle digit outside. We can't have the sandwich being there and also there, so that's just not going to make sense. One of these two is going to be outside the sandwich, and we know that outside the sandwich there needs to be exactly 6, and so the only way that we can not overshoot is by making that the 6, and then this becomes the sandwich, the crust in fact. So the crusts need to be 4 and 7, that obviously has to be the 7, and that obviously has to be the 4, and that gives us an 8 there, and it takes a 6 out of there. So we are making nice progress. In this row, all we've got left is 3, 5 and 9, but let's think a little bit more about that. This can't be a 3, obviously, and this one can't be a 5. Why not? Well, because this sandwich, what goes outside the sandwich now must be 5 and 2, because it can't be 3 and 4 anymore, because there's a 3 slap bang in the middle of the sandwich. So outside the sandwich we must have the 5 and 2 somewhere, and because of the logic that we described earlier, we can never have a 5 and a 2 outside the sandwich here, and also a 5 and a 2 outside the sandwich here, because that results in a 1, 2, 5 and 9 all having to squeeze into 3 cells here. So this cannot be 5. Okay, can this be 9? Well, if this is 9, then we know that all of our sandwiches are 6 cells, that all of the crusts are 6 cells apart, so that would be a 1, and we get either a 2 and a 5 or a 3 and a 4 outside the sandwich, and either a 2 and a 5 or a 3 and a 4 outside. So we get a 2, 3, 4, 5 quadruple here, and a 6, 7, 8 triple here. In fact, actually, that's something we could have done a while ago. I won't do it now because I've just put in some hypothetical digits, so I can't do it now. I'll just end up undoing it. But yes, we can't have a 6, 7, 8 triple in the same column as somewhere we've already got an 8. So that's not going to work. So that cannot be a 9. So let's get rid of that. That cannot be a 9. That tells us that the 9, in fact, has to go in one of those, and the 1 has to go down here. Alright, yes, let's actually do that. So that becomes a 7, that becomes an 8. What that tells us is that, well, we know that these add up to 28 because of this x sums clue. So these add up to 17. We've already got an 8, so those two add up to 9. And in fact, by normal Sudoku, the 4 there, there, and there tells us that's a 4. So those two add up to 9, that's a 4, so that must be a 5. Now that tells us an awful lot of information about the first column. So that actually, with this Sudoku, I'll just take a quick pause to talk about the Sudoku in general. I think there are quite a lot of bits of information, little solution paths that you can go down. There are certain kind of bottlenecks where you do need to work out a certain bit of logic first before you progress on to the next thing. But I do think, like quite a lot of my puzzles, there are quite a few stages in the Sudoku where you've got a few choices of where you would like to proceed next in terms of which areas of the Sudoku board you'd like to investigate. And I think it doesn't make for the most kind of logically pleasing, satisfying puzzles from a kind of setter's perspective. You know, it's not one single solution path that the solver is clearly forced down, and so, you know, arguably it's a detriment to the Sudoku. But I think it's quite nice to give the solver a few different options of how they want to proceed with the solution, and a few different types of logic that they can use to move on to the next step. So yeah, I think there is more logic that we can do. Excuse me a second. Good. Yeah, I think there is more logic we can do in this area of the Sudoku. I don't think we've completely exhausted everything there, but there's so much information that we can get from column 1 now, because we know we need a 5 outside the sandwich, and the 5 cannot be outside the sandwich down here anymore, so it must be here, and that's going to tell us an awful lot. That tells us that the sandwich crusts are here. Let's paint them red. These are now green. Now we know we need a 9 in here somewhere, and it's not going to be there because we've just ruled it out from being there, and it's not going to be there, so that tells us that is now our 9, which tells us the 1 has to be down there, because we know it's exactly 6 steps apart because of logic that we've done earlier about the geometry of how these sandwiches are going to fit together. Those are now both green. And yeah, we're just not quite sure just yet about which way round these are. But actually this is the logic that you can do on these columns, which is to say that in this column we know we're going to have a 3 and a 4 outside the sandwich, and in this column we know we're going to have a 5 and a 2 outside the sandwich. Well, the 4 can't go outside the sandwich down here, so it must go outside the sandwich up here, and so it must be a 3-4 pair just here. In fact, the 3 must be here, the 4 must be there, that's a 1, that's a 9, and that makes that a 5, that makes that a 9, and it's all starting to fall apart now. So let's just do a little bit of colouring in, painting the crusts red, painting everything else green. Excellent, that now becomes a 9, that becomes a 1. We've just got a little bit of 1s and 9s logic to do in the middle rows, but that's fine, we'll come back to that. Right, so we need these to be 2 and 5, and that 5 tells us which way round. It's mostly normal Sudoku at this point. We need 5, well, we've got 5 there, so that needs to be something that adds to 5 to make 7. It's a 2. It's a 2. These 2 therefore must be 3 and 4 because they can't be 2 and 5 anymore, and that 3 tells us which way round. In fact, I think we can finish off the 3s now. There's 1 there, there's 1 there, and there's 1 there. Good, those are the 3s all done. This needs a 5, 6 and 8. The 8 tells us that's there, and the 5 goes there, and the 6 goes there because of that 5. This is a 6 and a 7. That's, oh no, it's not a 6 and a 7, it's a 7 and an 8. Let's backtrack a little bit there. In here, well, the 5 and the 2 tells us that's a 6, so these aren't 6 anymore. In fact, that 5 tells us that's 2, that's 5. What do we need in here? We need 6 and 7. I'm sure that will reveal itself pretty quickly. This is missing a 4. This column is missing 2 and 6. Oh, don't quite know those just yet. That's alright. This box is missing 2, 6 and 7. The 2 is forced into here, and the 6, 7 is resolved like that. In fact, actually, yeah, that 7, 8 was resolved by that 8 a long time ago. My mistake. Right, okay, this column is missing an 8, which resolves that 7, 8. What else do we need? We need a 1, 2, 5 and 6 in here. Oh, hang on, what's gone on here? This is not 6 and 7, is it? It's 4 and 7. Alright, so that's a 4 and a 7. Oh, I hope I've not messed everything up. I think I've recovered it. Right. This is therefore 2 and 6 in some order. This is 7 and 8. 7 there and 8 there. What do we need in here? 2, 5, 6, and 8. The 2 and the 5 go there. So that's a 5, 2, 2, 6, 6, 8. Yes, this is all looking fine. I think we've got away with that one. In this column we need 4 and 7. So that's the 4 and that's the 7. In this column we need 7 and 5. In this column we need 5 and 6. So that resolves the 6 and the 2. That means a 2 there and a 1 there. That means that's going to be red. Let's just finish off our colouring before we finish off the numbers. So that means that's a 9. So that resolves all of that for us. And what's our last digit? It's 8. There we go. That's it. The thematic 28 4 sevens puzzle that has nothing to do with New Year, but never mind. Maybe next year I'll have planned ahead enough to create a thematic puzzle that has something to do with the New Year celebrations. But until then, we will just enjoy, hopefully, a bunch more Sudokus. I don't know how long I'm going to keep this up, to be perfectly honest, because I am now running a little bit thin in terms of my backlog of Sudokus that I've designed. But I will try my best to keep this up a few more weeks. I've certainly got a couple more to show you. Like I said, thank you so much if you've been watching over the past couple of months. Hope you have a lovely new year. Please do like, subscribe, comment, all the usual things. And thanks again for watching. Have a lovely... No, I've said that bit. Bye. See you next Friday. Have a good week. Bye-bye.